We did it! We reached the final stretch of 2023. It's now December, so now it's time to rank all 8 of the November 2023 releases that I saw, from the worst to the best. If you want to hear me talk about a specific movie, I'll be leaving timestamps in the description, so let's get started. Easily coming in at last place at number 8 is Dashing Through the Snow. Absolutely nothing about it is something that you haven't seen before. It's basically the Tim Allen movie The Santa Claus, mixed with a little bit of the slapstick humor of Home Alone, except it's not actually funny. Divorced dad? Check. Main adult character who doesn't believe in Santa? Check. A Santa who everyone thinks is just some random dude in a suit, but actually is the real Santa? Check. Villain who stopped believing in Santa because they didn't get the toy they wanted for Christmas as a kid? Check. Nothing about this movie breaks any new ground, and it feels like an assembly line movie without any Christmas magic. And whoo boy, the performances are awful. I'm not sure why they got Ludacris of all people to star in this movie, because he's way too wooden, and the actor who plays Santa is too over the top and tries too hard to be funny. The villains are lazy and forgettable, and this is the same director as 2005's Fantastic Four and 2021's Tom and Jerry. I honestly don't know how this director keeps getting hired. My word, was this awful. It's one of the worst Christmas movies I've ever seen, and everyone involved deserves a lump of coal. Number 7, Good Burger 2. What works about it is Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell return to their roles pretty naturally. It doesn't feel like any time has passed, but that's also a huge problem. The characters haven't really developed that much. Kel still plays the idiot, Kenan still plays the straight man, and there are only so many jokes that you can do with that setup, especially because this movie is based on a sketch from the 90s Nickelodeon show All That, so it gets pretty irritating pretty quickly. Kenan is still the idiot, and it's hard to suspend disbelief that he's both still this stupid and still has a job, let alone that he's now the manager of the place. I can understand him being an idiot in the first film because he's a teenager, but over 20 years have passed and he hasn't changed. How in the world does he still have a job? With all the times he screws up, how has he not been fired? A premise like that only works the first time. The trailers didn't really tell you the plot of the movie, and I can see why. The plot is just not very good. It's more or less the same plot as the first one, but semi-updated for a new decade. An evil corporation buys out Good Burger to franchise it and wants to replace all the workers with robots. That's kinda dumb, and not a fun kind of dumb, which is the kind of dumb this movie should have. It doesn't really have anything new to say about the issue of AI replacing human workers. It just kind of presents the issue, and that's it. I didn't find this one all that amusing, but bless Kenan and Kel, they are trying. They just aren't given that great material to work with. To me, this was a burger that was reheated in the microwave too many times. Number 6, Trolls Band Together. As someone who really enjoyed the previous 2 films of this franchise, I was a bit disappointed with this one. The writing for it was just odd. I can't really determine who the audience for it is. On one hand, it tries to entertain the 90s kids who are now parents with homages to 90s boy bands, but on the other hand, most of it comes off as really childish. The plot isn't really all that interesting, and it has way too many side plots bogging it down. The villains in this movie also feel very out of place based on the previous villains in the other 2 movies. The relationship between Branch and Poppy also feels very inconsistent. The film doesn't know if one makes them romantic or platonic. In the animation department, though, it shines, making each step on this road trip have a very different animation style that feels very unique. Overall, though, the movie fell pretty flat. Number 5, Leo. This was certainly more heartfelt than I was expecting it to be. As hit or miss as Adam Sandler can be, this one actually had a genuine sweetness to it. The writing was sharp, the end result was adorable, and overall, this is a very feel-good family movie. The characters are all likable, it's solidly entertaining, and it has a lot of heart to it. You can tell they were trying to make a legitimately good film with a lot of passion. However, the way the plot flows does feel more appropriate for a TV show. The plot can be pretty repetitive at times. This honestly would have worked better as a TV show with each kid being given a 10 to 20 minute episode, but as a movie, it feels incredibly repetitive. The other issue is that Sandler can be pretty annoying in this. He does that high-pitched New York accent that he thinks is funny, but is actually really grating, and it doesn't fit the character design at all. I wish he'd done a performance more akin to his Dracula from Hotel Transylvania, where you can't even really tell it's him, but no, he does the same shtick that he always does, and it gets very old really fast. Also, this is a musical, and there's practically no segue to any of the songs, so it feels like they come out of nowhere, and none of the songs are particularly memorable. Overall, though, I'm glad I saw it. It had a lot of sweetness to it. It was very heartwarming and a feel-good family film. Number 4, Next Goal Wins. Taika Waititi's signature humor is on display here, providing a very witty script and balancing the dramatic moments as well. The dialogue is sharp and witty, especially the moments of culture clash of the American coach essentially being a fish out of water, if you'll pardon the cliche, and trying to learn the culture of American Samoa to coach the soccer team who are failing tremendously. The film is based on a true story, so I can't really blame it for some of the sports movie cliches it has, but at the same time, that is Hollywood trying to make the film more exciting using a familiar formula. The second act also suffers from a few pacing issues that feel more like they're filler and should have sped up a bit more. The film is very well directed, and the cinematography of American cinema is gorgeous, but I enjoy learning a few things about the culture, even though, like I said before, I'm not big into sports. I still felt the tension and excitement of watching the soccer matches and training montages, even though they feel a bit familiar. Now, this isn't a movie that I would say you should immediately rush out to see. In my opinion, it's perfectly fine to wait to stream it. If you're a Taika Waititi fan, you'll probably enjoy it. If you're a sports fan, you'll probably enjoy it, even if it is a bit familiar. But if you don't fall into one of at least those two audiences, it's probably not for you. Number 3, Wish. The plot really is not all that interesting, the pacing is wonky, and the songs are pretty bad. I only remember 2 songs from this movie, and one of them was the villain song. And even then, the villain song was not that great. And at times, the lyrics of the songs don't even really make sense. I really hope the songwriters never come back to do another Disney project, because good golly, were those songs a miss. The characters are also pretty forgettable, aside from Alan Tudyk and Chris Pine, and the movie feels like it was made just to cram a few Easter eggs that remind you of much better Disney movies. And the villain is not really that evil, he feels very generic, it's not this big grand adventure, it's just Disney patting themselves on the back. So overall, this is a pretty lackluster, lame kind of Disney movie. Number 2, The Marvels. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this. After hearing a lot of bad word of mouth, my expectations were very low, but I really enjoyed how fun it was. I enjoyed the dynamic of the 3 main characters. There were certain sequences that I found to be a ton of fun. The humor was great, the story was more interesting than the first film, but the villain is generic and forgettable, and unfortunately the movie does require having to watch at least 2 different Disney Plus shows to understand it. And coming in at first place is Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Right off the bat, the aesthetic in this movie looks fantastic. The set designers, director, and cinematographer all did a great job of making the world of Panem look very depressing and war-torn. A huge complaint I saw a lot of people have with the first movie was that none of the characters look starving. In this one, they make sure they show you that, yes, the people in the district are starving. For example, the first time we see young Snow, he is basically skin and bones. The film does a great job of expanding the lore of the world of Panem. A lot of elements that were barely touched on or glossed over completely in the other films, such as the origin of the Mockingjays, the events that led to the capital starting the Hunger Games in the first place, get explored a bit deeper here. The characters in this movie are all fantastic, and frankly, I actually cared about the love story between Snow and Lucy in this one, whereas in the Katniss films, I honestly didn't care less who she ended up with. I just wanted her to overthrow President Snow, and found the love triangle aspect a bit thin. Here, I actually care about Snow as a character and what happens with his relationship. The film does a great job of showing just how despicable the people in the capital are. And it's already horrific that they're sending teenagers off to murder each other for sport, and here it makes that even worse by showing that the capital thinks of the tributes as nothing more than animals in a zoo. And not even children with disabilities such as missing limbs, blindness, or Down syndrome are spared from the horrors of the games. And the capital even takes bets on who's going to last longest, and even laugh when certain children are murdered. The film did a great job at making you feel angry for what they do. The cast in this film is also fantastic. This is the first movie for Tom Blythe, who plays young Snow, and he does a phenomenal job of showing the tragedy of what happens to his character as the events of the film get more and more tragic. Jason Schwartzman also does a great job as the host of the Hunger Games. You hate his character because he's hosting such a horrific event, but he also brings such a charm to it, which is how the people of the capital are. Vern Gorman is great as the villain in the second half of this movie. Viola Davis gives a great performance. All around, a fantastic cast who give fantastic performances. However, it does feel like this is 2 different movies. And it's also divided up into parts, just like The Creator, which was weird. So I think maybe this would have worked better as a mini-series, and I feel like there's a lot more that they could have explored by the end, but that's the fault of the author, because this feels like the first movie of a trilogy of books, even though this is the only book. It feels like there's more story that Suzanne Collins wants to explore, but she hasn't yet explored that, so they probably should have waited until she published more books, like they did with the first Hunger Games trilogy, where all the books were finished, so they had a template for where to work with and where they wanted the story to go. Here it feels like they just wanted to jump on the bandwagon as fast as they could, so there were a few issues with maybe the pacing of the second half and how the film was divided, but overall, I thought this was a really well done film, so it comes in at number 1. I was going to share your ranking of the November releases that you saw, and I will see you next time.